Thank you for joining us on Connect and Collaborate. Today we bring you another episode as part of a special series, Finding Colorado's Next Governor. The Colorado Business Roundtable is proud to partner with the Denver Business Journal to bring you in-depth interviews with Colorado's gubernatorial candidates. I'm Alex Hopkins, along with Jeff Wasden, president of the Colorado Business Roundtable, and Ed Seelover with the Denver Business Journal. And today we have Matthew Wood, who is our first unaffiliated candidate that we have on board today. Welcome, guys. How's everyone doing?
Absolutely wonderful. It's great to see you. And Matthew, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. This is our first time. Evidently, we're being YouTube live. I've never done this. This is my maiden voyage today, too. And so I think a lot of people are going to realize Faces for Radio, that exists for a reason. But here we are. It's a smile, I think.
Seems a little strange to be doing this without that quart of vodka that we usually have out. But, all right, there's a first for everything.
That's right. We have to clear all that off the table. Now people get to see that. Well, Matthew, thank you for joining us on Finding Colorado's Next Governor. This has been a great opportunity for us, along with the Denver Business Journal, to introduce the candidates desiring to serve as our next governor here in the state of Colorado. And you were probably candidate number 5 or 6 throughout this journey.
I believe so, yeah.
Number 6.
Yes.
You had a chance to listen to them all.
Yes.
Let's start with that. You made a little drive over the pass today and listened to the series of interviews on the way. Any critiques of the candidates we've been able to do, or critiques for me and Ed here?
For the most part, everyone that I listened to, I'm not going to say that I fully agreed with everybody 100%, but I appreciated everybody. It's not something that I saw where there's going to be a knockdown brawl by people that are competing based on the interviews. I'm not saying that it won't happen, but it seemed like everyone has decent integrity and that they're going to go into this with the idea of a clean campaign.
It's Ed's disarming, sunny disposition. I think that just lowers everybody. No, Ed, that's right. See, now they get to see those facial expressions now. So, Matthew, you made the drive over.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about you, your background, so our listeners get a chance to meet Matthew Wood, unaffiliated candidate for governor.
Sure. Well, just kind of giving a background of where I'm from and all of that. I grew up in Sterling, Colorado, which is in the northeastern corner. Went to college there. I graduated from Northeastern Junior College with an associate's in psychology, and then did a 3+1 program with Northeastern Junior College and Colorado Christian University to get my bachelor's in human resources. After I finished college, I ended up moving clear across the state over to Grand Junction. I'm
glad you said that. I was getting worried when you said Northeast Sterling. I kept talking about this pass you drove over, and I'm sure someone's going, Jeff, there's no pass going that way. So thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, no worries. For the past 21 years, I've been involved in martial arts. And I started teaching classes shortly after I started attending, and the school in Sterling ended up shutting down during the recession and everything, and the next closest school that I knew of that trained in the same style was in Grand Junction, so that's what brought me out there. I taught at the martial arts school in Grand Junction for a number of years, and then from there I moved on to work in loss prevention for a few years and switched from there into working with a courier company, so kind of get a wide range of different types of people that you get to deal with. All of them are kind of in a customer service oriented industry, some in different aspects. So you get to see some of the best of people in the martial arts, and you get to see some of the worst of people in the loss prevention, and then somewhere in between when you're doing deliveries. So.
And so in all this, what made you decide to run for governor?
A big part, working in with the martial arts and everything, I've always had a desire to help people. I always like helping people get to where they want to be and just help to improve people's lives. And with the upcoming election, I saw this as a huge step to be to being into a position to help a very large number of people. Even if, let's say I don't win the election. If I can go through the campaign and promote an idea that helps improve even one person's life, then it's still a win. So even the journey to the election can help to accomplish the goals of what I'm trying to get.
And you're the first unaffiliated candidate in this election. You're the first unaffiliated candidate we've had on the show here. Why go the unaffiliated route?
There's a couple different reasons. The main one, especially after this last election cycle, I don't know how anyone else felt about it, but both parties just seem to be not very ideal for something to be affiliated with. I wasn't always unaffiliated. I did start off with a certain party, but even when I was affiliated, it was never something that was an ideal of mine. That was one of those where, as I was growing up in school, we were learning about one of the presidential elections, and the teachers would say, well, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? And as a student, I was like, well I don't know. Which one am I? What does that mean? And I never really understood at that age what the difference was. And so I acquired an affiliation more because those around me, the majority had that same affiliation. And as I look in policies and stuff, I don't find myself fully aligning with one side or the other. And I see a lot of those that will either completely agree with or completely fight against somebody solely because of their party affiliation. And I want to try to eliminate a lot of the squabbling just because of you're not in the cool kids group, so we're gonna fight against whatever you're wanting to do.
And I just have to ask real quickly, which martial arts do you specialize in?
We do a blended style. It's modeled after Bruce Lee's philosophy, so it's a Jeet Kune Do blend, but we do a little bit of everything. So,
always curious when we're talking about not going into combat and politics, what someone in the martial arts is into.
Very nice, Ed.
Thank you, guys. Stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate as we hear more from unaffiliated candidate Matthew Wood on our Finding Colorado's Next Governor series. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for joining us today on Connect and Collaborate, where we are doing another episode of Finding Colorado's Next Governor. In-house, we have President of the Colorado Business Roundtable, Jeff Wasden, with us. We have Ed Sealiver from Denver Business Journal, and our first unaffiliated candidate, Matthew Wood. Welcome, gentlemen. Let's jump in.
So, Matthew, I'm going to actually start right there. Because we've got a ace reporter here, and I'm probably smarter than I look, through power of deduction, through your background at CCU, I'm going to guess you were a Republican once upon a time in your life when you made that decision. Mm-hmm. So you talked about the last election and not being a fan of either party and the way that election went. Is that when you decided to unaffiliate from the Republican Party, or was that earlier in life and that last election just manifested that's for you?
That was when I made the official decision. I had kind of been disconnected for a while. The main reason why I really got mainly affiliated with the party was when I lived in Sterling. I had a family member that ran for office in Logan County, and in order to vote for them in the primary, I needed to be affiliated as a Republican for them.
Nice. Well, let's jump right into the issues. Ed, fire away.
Let's talk about a topic that's going to divide people along party lines and sometimes within party lines, transportation. You've traveled across the state, very literally. Tell us what you think of where Colorado's transportation system stands right now, what improvements you would be willing to make as governor, and if you cite any of those, where you're going to find the money for that.
Okay. This is one of those... all of these issues that we bring up, there's not going to be one set answer that's going to appease everybody. If there was, then it wouldn't be an issue that came up with the elections. It'd just be done. I haven't personally seen a lot of the issues with the transportation. There's definitely roads, are constantly being improved. There's the joke of there's 2 seasons in Colorado, winter and construction. And so we do constantly have the improvements being made. One of the main issues on the Western Slope, especially dealing with the courier company, is the bridge in Glenwood Springs. There's the main bridge that connects the one side to the other, and they're fixing that. They're making it bigger and better, and so everyone is being rerouted through a 2-lane road instead of the 4-lane bridge that was there, and so it really increases the time that it takes to get in and out of Glenwood Springs in the morning and the evenings. The trick with improving transportation is that it does cause the immediate backlog. So they're working on the bridge in order to make it better, more efficient once it's done. But we've had, I think it's going on 2 months now that the bridge has been out, where people are struggling to get to work on time and all that if they're in that area. So when you're looking to improve the situation like transportation, you have to take into consideration what is going to be beneficial now or what's going to be beneficial in the long run. And there's different views on where they can go with that. So I've seen the struggle if you're looking at working on more mass transportation and stuff like that. The construction to build new lanes or parking structures or whatever is going to take away from other things that could be put into place, or it's going to cause that construction to build the bike lanes, and it'll slow things down while it's getting done.
Let's kind of, and I see your big picture thinking here, but let's kind of go for a couple of the flashpoints and just ask you about this. First of all, do you feel the state needs to raise a new source of revenue through a sales tax or any other taxes to fund transportation improvements?
Based off of what I've heard, I feel that they do need a little bit more of that revenue. Where it would specifically come from, I can't say for sure. This is one of those, I like to try to talk to people that are in each of those given areas. So I don't know if you guys have had that experience before where you're working in a job and the boss comes in and tells you this is what you need to do, and you're like, well, that's not going to work because you're in that field and you know that this thing isn't going to work in your situation. But from looking up here, looking down, it should work just fine. And I feel sometimes that can happen even with this level. So if you get somebody at that top position that has no experience with transportation or anything like that, they can say, oh, we'll just throw this much money at it, and then that will solve the problem. Where the people in that situation say, no, this isn't the problem. This is what we need to do. And I think it's creating a conversation with those people to figure out what they think would be the best solution and try to work with them.
Okay, one more I'll ask you about this then, and this may be more of your create conversation than have a definitive answer, but how much of our resources should we be putting into multimodal means of transportation, bike lanes, public transit, trains, etc.? Some people say we should go almost completely for roads. Some people say we need to put a significant amount of money into multimodal. Where do you stand?
A lot of that's going to depend on the area. I recently just took a trip to New York, and they need a lot of the multi-modes of transportation down there just because there's so many people. The traffic down there is ridiculous, so it doesn't matter how much they spend on roads, they need that. So, like in Denver, it may be very beneficial to look into the multi-modes of transportation just because of the amount of people in the area. Whereas when you get into more of the rural areas, they still need some of that to an extent, but most of that is going to be, they're going to be more focused on the maintaining of their roads.
Let's get into energy policy. And of course, being from the Western Slope, you understand the importance of energy to this state, whether from a GDP, from energy independence for our nation. Talk about an energy policy under a Matthew Wood governorship.
I would really like to see more thought and more energy put into the clean renewable energy. There has been a lot of articles that I've seen posted that have pointed to fracking not being beneficial towards the planet. I've seen articles showing that there have been either leaks that have occurred that have contaminated parts of water supplies, or that it increases earthquakes in those areas. And so I understand, and I don't want to necessarily take jobs away from people in those areas, but at the same time, if we're destroying our ecosystem in order to sustain them, maybe it would be best to refocus our energies.
And so how would you do that as governor?
Well, in an ideal situation, what I'd like to do is try to work with the oil companies to see if we can get them to invest in and refocus into more cleaner energies. So that way it's not necessarily a matter of people losing jobs or anything like that. You have people that are in place that are already working with energy, help them to see the benefits of cleaner energy, and then potentially refocusing some of their workers into moving in that direction.
Is it really realistic, though, to take a company who specializes in drilling into the earth and ask them to start building solar panels?
Again, that's an ideal situation. Realistically, it probably wouldn't happen. It's not an easy answer, because you don't want to be that guy that costs people a bunch of jobs. I feel, though, long term, the cleaner energy is going to be the way to go, and the specifics of how to get there. Again, I'm not going to claim to be an expert in any of these fields. I'm still continually learning on what the best ways to go about things are going to be. I'd like to work towards encouraging those companies that are established to work in with some of our companies and areas in here that use a lot of the energy, and start transferring a lot of stuff over if feasibly possible.
I want to let's shift conversation. We're probably going to run out of time here in this segment, and we'll just pick up later as we move into segment 3. Economic development is a important issue across this state, and certainly the Amazon proposal and the chase to bring in 50,000 jobs in HQ2 to a state like Colorado here in the Denver market. You're out obviously from Sterling initially, now out in the West Slope and Grand Junction. Economic development and what they're experiencing and feeling as way of economic vitality and the number of jobs, the types of industry, the diversity of industry is very different there than it is here in Metro Denver. How do you incentivize economic development in rural Colorado in Grand Junction? What does it take for you, and what would you do to encourage jobs and company relocations and make sure that everybody in Grand Junction has a meaningful job, career, future out there on the West Slope?
All right, got a lot there to take in.
Of course, with a minute to go. It's Jeff. What do you want?
I know we've heard a lot of it before in some of the previous segments, but I do feel like we need to take a look at a lot of the regulations and make sure that they're still valid to today's society. A lot of things that we have in the books, especially with the way technology spreads in its leaps and bounds, not all of it is continually relevant till today. So I think that's my cue.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be right back talking more on economic development with Matthew Wood. And we've got Jeff Wasden in the house along with Ed Sealiver. Stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate, and join us at cobrt.com/live. Thank you so much for staying with us on Connect and Collaborate today. We are doing another episode of Finding Colorado's Next Governor. We've partnered with Denver Business Journal to bring you this series. We have Ed Sealiver in house today performing some interview questions along with Jeff Wasden, who doesn't give anybody any time to answer those questions.
So we'll just pick right back up there because, I kind of left a heavy there. But Matthew, I'm not going to let you off the hook on this. You represent rural Colorado, really our first candidate to come in from either the Slope or Plains here of Colorado that really are experiencing two different economies in the state. Let's really talk about what you want to do to really attract businesses, retain companies in rural Colorado. How do you get the right workforce with the unemployment numbers where they are today?
Again, no simple questions we got. I lost my entire train of thought. Give me a second.
That's all right. Let me kind of prompt a little bit, right?
Sure.
We're going after Amazon here in Metro
Okay,
Denver.
right,
They're
right.
not going to Grand Junction. They're not going to Sterling, right? You've got a different climate, different industry, different sets of training and skill sets, industry clusters that are there, different incentives, access to airport, to workforce. What does that mean to rural Colorado, and how do we ensure that they reap the same benefits and enjoy the same economic prosperity that those in Metro Denver are experiencing?
Okay. That is a good question. In
Oh, wait, we're on to you.
So sorry, Matthew.
I know in the a lot of the times in the rural areas you find where a lot of people kind of work in the same industries. So like over in Grand Junction, there's a large number of people that you find work at the hospital. So we have St. Mary's Hospital in Grand Junction. You have a lot of people that work in the oil field. Or over in Sterling, you have a lot of people that work either in oil field or for the trains. And when you get into, aside from the bigger companies that do happen to reside in and around those areas, I think a lot of the times it comes down to trying to help companies find the right people for the job, which is easier said than done. A lot of the times people look into whether they have the right degrees or experience or whatever when they're looking for candidates, which I definitely see where they're coming from, but that doesn't always get them the best results. Just a slight example to give, my current job that I have with the courier company, I actually interviewed for them twice. The first time I interviewed, they went with somebody else because they had more experience than I did. I didn't have much experience in a courier field. And that person worked, I think, one day, decided that job wasn't for them, and then they left. And so they gave me a chance, and I've been with them almost 3 years, and I'd like to think that I'm a very valuable employee to them. You know, they have given me more responsibilities over time just because it was something that was right for me, and if they stick with where they were at, you know, they wouldn't have been able to we wouldn't have been able to connect that way. I don't think that really answered your question.
Okay, let's go for a more direct policy question here then. This is one that people have grappled with for years, the Colorado paradox. We import people with bachelor's degrees at such a level that we have the second most educated workforce in America, yet people struggle who live in Colorado to make it through the high school and college system here. What do we do to improve our ability to train the next generation of our workforce so we become less reliant on having to import all our talent to this state?
I think when we're looking at that one specifically, it's going to work in with improving how we work with our educational system. One thing that I came across as a potential example is I saw in, I believe it was New York, they were working towards giving free college tuition with the condition of for however many years you accepted the free tuition, you had to work in the state for that number of years. So if you had the free tuition for 2 years after you graduated, you had to find a job in New York and then work for 2 years before you can move out to kind of work towards paying it back. And I think potential incentives to having people continue learning in Colorado could help. But I think if we can help to improve how our education system works within Colorado, it can be beneficial as well.
Such as, how do we improve our education system within Colorado?
There's a couple different ways that we can look into that. I know a common thing that you hear a lot is that teachers are underpaid and overworked. I don't have a magic lamp that I can rub to magically give everyone a raise to where they need to be paid. Another thing, the standardizing, I don't necessarily fully agree with. I get where it's coming from, but people as individuals, they aren't standard, if that makes sense. Everyone has different ways of learning and different interests in how they learn. That's one of the things that I really learned from teaching martial arts, is to try to find a way to connect with the students. And I don't know if that's necessarily policy per se, but ways that we can teach our teachers on how to be more efficient. One of the things when I was working with the martial arts school in Grand Junction is we were constantly learning still. The owners subscribed to numerous different groups that help to show how to best be the best instructor that you can be. So it's showing you, it doesn't matter what kind of a day you're having, you teach the best class that you can teach every time you teach a class. And I know we've all had that situation where we've had that teacher that's been so thrilling and you end up falling asleep halfway through class or whatever. And I think that can discourage kids, because if you're not excited about a certain topic and the teacher isn't excited about that topic either, you're going to start to lose people. If we can find ways to help teachers to improve the way that they can transmit the information, it can, in the long term, help the students to be more engaged in their schooling.
Hey, I like the fact you relied and went back to your martial arts training, because you're a teacher in that capacity, right? You're talking about individualized instruction, connecting with students, relevancy, ongoing training and education. So you're living that, right? It's transferring that into the actual education K-12 system and making sure kids have access, are excited about learning, and changing whether it's workforce readiness or college readiness, and the paths that students take, right? And ensuring that they have access to that. So you're living it. It's just kind of working on getting that policy down, because that's what you did each and every day. And I applaud you for that, right there. I think anybody teaching our nation's youth, whether it's in sports, whether it's in the arts, whether it's in your case, martial arts, it deserves a lot of credit for finding ways to connect with those students and ensure that. You mentioned earlier looking at the regulatory environment. I want to talk a little bit about that. How do you find that right balance between protecting the environment, protecting the workforce, and ensuring business is balanced in how much regulations are placed upon them?
I think that's another thing where we need to create that conversation to try to find ideas from the people that are on the front lines. I don't fully know all of the regulations myself, so if I were to say, these ones need to go away, these ones don't, I'd be coming from a place with a lack of knowledge. So I don't feel that I can fully answer that question. I think that's something where working with people that are more versed in there and then trying to find the good balance is where it needs to be.
Thank you so much, Matthew Wood. We will be right back here on Connect and Collaborate. We're bringing you Finding Colorado's Next Governor. Matthew is our first and only unaffiliated candidate that we've had on so far. Stay with us at cobrt.com/live. Thank you so much for joining us on Connect and Collaborate. Excuse me. We have some vodka in studio today, clearly. We are continuing on with our conversation.
Is that how you do it? You hide it in a water bottle.
Of course.
Okay.
That's how else would you do it?
Got to learn these things, huh?
So we have Matthew Wood here for Finding Colorado's Next Governor. We also have Ed Sealover with Denver Business Journal, who we partnered with for this series, and Jeff Wasden, president of the Colorado Business Roundtable. So we've got a great conversation going on.
Matthew, I want to veer away from issues, and we're going to come back to them in a second, but I think for some of the people who may be listening in or maybe wondering what to take from this, there's going to be the question of, you're the first unaffiliated candidate here. Now, have you run for office before, or is this your first run?
Technically, yes. Years ago, I ran for mayor of Sterling. Just in a technical sense, at that time, I didn't get too invested in it, so as far as officially doing any of this type of stuff, it's my first time around, but I have had my name in in a ballot before.
Okay, so you're starting out with a small office like Colorado governor. You're running without the backing of a party. Why should people listening in think that you've got a chance to win this? Why should they pay attention to you?
The main thing, I'm not the typical candidate. I like to listen to both sides. I like to work with everybody. I don't want to try to veer off to one side or the other. So that's where the unaffiliated comes in. Another thing that I'm doing that's probably going to detriment me in the long run, but I've made the choice. I'm not accepting any contributions. Like, I don't want to end up in the back pocket of some big corporation or whatever, and I know it's going to make it difficult for traveling and everything for campaigning. One of the things that I want to work on, going back to the whole thing of helping people, if people find an interest in the campaign and they were wanting to donate, what I've been asking of people is, instead of donating to a campaign, is to donate to either a local charity or some sort of small business organization, which inevitably helps Colorado in the long run. So that way, whether the campaign is a success or not, in the end, somewhere Colorado still wins. If I can give you an example of one of the ones that I'm starting off with.
Well, let me just ask you,
Sure.
rather than kind of veer that way, do you expect to win, or are you trying to make a point another way?
With the number of people and all of the odds stacked against, the odds are stacked against me. It's not something where I'm going in to plan for failure. Like, the goal is to win the election, but I don't want to go about it by the conventional means. I feel like a lot of people do the same things that have just been done before just because they've been done before. And a lot of this stuff I don't personally agree with or am comfortable with. And so I'm kind of taking my own path and seeing how far I can get with it.
So what is that path, right? You're not accepting financial contributions. You don't have the backing of a party. It's going to take money to get your message out for someone to know who you are. You can replay this wonderful podcast we're going to have and this interview all over the state, which will help. But outside of that, if you were to dream the scenario that at some point on election night, you hear your name called as the next governor, how do you get there?
A lot of it comes from personal interactions. One of the things that I've tried to get set up is I got an email set up that goes directly to me, and so whenever I do my promotions for anything, it has that email available. So anybody that wants to know more information or wants to start a conversation, they have that direct access.
What is that email?
That is woodforcolorado@gmail.com.
Thank you.
And I heard from right before the podcast, I was looking through some YouTube videos, and there was a video of somebody that was just going through the list of candidates for governor. And I was just kind of skipping through, and there was one part in there where he stated that he tried to contact one of the candidates to learn a little bit more about him, and they came back with, "I don't have time to answer your questions." And I don't want to be that type of individual that sees themselves as too important for any individual. In my mind, the governor is a public servant. They're there to help the people, and so I don't want to have that disconnect. I want to be available for those that have questions. They may not necessarily like the answers, but I want to make sure that I am personally giving them those answers.
Now, Matthew, we've asked you about the issues that our business leaders talk about a lot, but what is the one issue that you want to have a big influence on, whether that's winning this race or forcing other people to talk about it? What is the one thing that would be most important to you as a gubernatorial candidate or governor?
Let's see.
That's why he's the reporter.
I think the biggest issue is working in with energy. Climate change has been a big thing that has been in the news. We've had all the hurricanes and everything, and I mean it's getting to the point where it's looking, if we don't make a change, then it's going to get to a point beyond our control where there's nothing that we're going to be able to do. And so that's a big focus, is on the cleaner energy, trying to work on lowering carbon emissions and all those types of things. So if I had to pigeonhole it into one thing that I would really like to see a change on, it's having Colorado be an example on how to make the planet better, so that way we're not continuing to destroy things.
I'm not going to let the opportunity to ask you this question get away before we close our interview here in the next few minutes. Being our first rural candidate, rural broadband is a critical issue for our outlying communities, and that access not only to the platform to be able to get that education, further those opportunities, and connect with the world. How do you push that issue forward as a governor to ensure all of Colorado has access to high-speed internet?
That's a good question. I'll be completely honest with you. In the areas that I've lived and everything, that hasn't been a huge issue. Sterling has broadband, Grand Junction has it. I know there's other of the smaller communities and towns that don't. So it's not something that has been directly brought to my attention prior. It is definitely something that is an issue. I mean, if you don't have that quick connection, like I know a lot of people do homeschooling and stuff, and that's computer connected. So
I'm still on AOL, and I love hearing that little sound, so don't worry, it's all good. Hey, let me shift in real quick, because we're going to run out of time here. Ed asked something that you would be interested in making a difference in. Let me change that question. What are you hearing from people that's of interest to them? What are they telling you that they want you to work on if elected, Matthew?
A lot of it varies depending on the professions that I've heard from. Everyone kind of gears it more towards their specific areas. Quick example, just I got a chance to speak with some state patrol, and everyone, they're always talking about being underfunded and everything, and this particular trooper that I spoke with talked about how he's continually, over time gets a raise for his work, and he personally would like to see, instead of a raise for himself, he'd like to see a raise in the number of troopers out on the state, because it's not just a matter of not making enough for himself, but there's just not enough manpower. And so it really does vary depending on the individual.
Let me ask a real quick question. We have not hit healthcare. You live in one of the most expensive areas in America to buy health insurance. Is there anything the state can or should do about this?
Based on the people that I've talked to, in order to really make an efficient change, it has to be done on a national level. I do appreciate everything that the current administration is doing to try to help as much as they can, and ultimately I don't have the answer for that, but I would definitely like to get a chance to speak with more people to find out the best way to go about it.
Matthew, on behalf of the Colorado Business Roundtable and Denver Business Journal, thanks for joining us today. You've got a lot of people to talk to and an ambitious task ahead of you. We wish you well on that journey. All the best to you, and thanks for tuning in, listeners.
Yes, absolutely. If you do have more questions for Matthew, check out woodforcolorado@gmail.com. Email him. He'll answer your questions directly. And check us out at cobrt.com. Sign up for our newsletter, and we are also available Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and now YouTube. Thanks.